Your son isn't a priority. You'll have to wait.
He's been sick for 3 days. His fever is 104.
Ma'am, I understand your concern.
Your son isn't a priority. You'll have to wait. I stared at the doctor. My son was burning with fever, struggling to breathe. And this man in his white coat with his clipboard and his cold eyes, was telling me to wait. He's been sick for 3 days. His fever is 104. He's not keeping food down. Something is seriously wrong. Ma'am, I understand your concern, but we have critical patients. He's 4 years old. And we have a child in the next room who came by ambulance. Triage exists for a reason. He wasn't wrong about triage. I understood that. But it was the way he said it. The way he looked at me. The way his eyes had moved over my clothes, my old sweatshirt, my jeans with a hole in the knee, my sneakers that had seen better days, and made a calculation. I'd come straight from home. No makeup. Hair in a messy bun. My son wrapped in a blanket because I didn't have time to dress him properly. I looked like exactly what I was, a terrified mother who had rushed her child to the emergency room at 2 a.m. But to him, I looked like something else. Something less. Please, I said, just examine him. 5 minutes. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking you to look at my son. And I'm telling you that other patients take priority. If your son's condition were truly critical, you would have called an ambulance. I drove because it's faster. That tells me it's not an emergency. Take a seat. We'll get to you when we can. He turned and walked away. Just like that. No second look at Marcus. No reassessment. No humanity. I stood there, my son whimpering in my arms, and felt something I'd felt too many times before. Invisible. Dismissed. Calculated and found wanting. Let me tell you who I am. My name is Dr. Vanessa Monroe. I'm the chief of pediatric cardiology at University Medical Center, the flagship hospital of the same network this emergency room belonged to. I've published 47 papers. I've performed over 1,000 surgeries. I've saved children that other doctors said couldn't be saved. But that night, in that ER, I wasn't any of those things. I was just a black woman in old clothes. A mother who looked poor. Someone who could be made to wait. I found a seat in the waiting room. Held Marcus close. Watched his chest rise and fall with that shallow, labored breathing that every parent recognizes as wrong. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to pull rank. Not yet. I wanted to see how far this would go. I wanted to understand exactly what kind of care patients received when no one important was watching. 45 minutes passed. Marcus was getting worse. His skin was hot to the touch. His eyes were glassy. He'd stopped crying, which scared me more than the crying. I approached the nurse's station. My son needs to be seen, now. The nurse, a young woman who looked exhausted, glanced at her computer. You're next on the list. The doctor will. I've been next for almost an hour. My son is deteriorating. I need someone to examine him immediately. She looked uncomfortable. Let me page Dr. Harmon. Dr. Harmon. The one who had walked away from my son without a second glance. He appeared 3 minutes later. Same cold expression. Same quick assessment of my appearance. Same conclusion. Ma'am, I told you. My son's breathing has changed. His fever is spiking. He needs IV fluids at minimum. He may need imaging. You need to examine him right now. He raised an eyebrow. Are you a medical professional? There it was. The opening. I could have said yes. Could have ended this immediately. But I wanted to know what would happen if I said no. Does that matter? It matters because you're attempting to diagnose your own child and tell me how to do my job. I'm telling you what I'm observing. I'm telling you something is wrong. You're choosing not to listen. He stepped closer. Not in a caring way. In an intimidating way. Let me be very clear. I have 20 years of experience. I have a waiting room full of patients. I have actual emergencies happening right now. Your son has a fever and flu-like symptoms. He's uncomfortable, but he's not dying. Take a seat, give him Tylenol, and wait your turn. He's already had Tylenol. It's not working. His temperature keeps climbing. Then give him more fluids. I'm trying to. He can't keep anything down. That's what happens with viruses. It passes. He was turning away again. Walking away from my son. Again. Dr. Harmon. My voice stopped him. Something in my tone made him turn back. If something happens to my son because you refuse to examine him, I want to be very clear about what will follow. Is that a threat? It's a promise. I'm giving you one more opportunity to do your job. Examine my child. Rule out the serious conditions. Then I'll gladly wait. He stared at me. And then he laughed. Actually laughed. Ma'am, I don't know who you think you are, but this is my ER. I make the decisions here. And my decision is that your son can wait. He looked me up and down again. If you can't afford urgent care, that's not my problem. But you don't get to demand special treatment because you're impatient. Can't afford. There it was. The assumption underneath everything. He walked away. And this time, I let him go. I called my husband. David, I need you. What's wrong? Is Marcus okay? He's not, and neither is this hospital. I need you to come here, now, and bring your credentials. David arrived in 30 minutes. In that time, Marcus had gotten worse. His breathing was more labored. His fever had hit 105. And still, no one had examined him. David took one look at Marcus, and his face went white. How long has he been like this? 2 hours, they won't see him. What do you mean they won't see him? The attending, Harmon, decided we could wait. David is a calm man. A patient man. But I watched something shift in his eyes. Something dangerous. Stay here. He walked toward the nurse's station. And I watched what happened next. The same nurse who had looked at me with mild sympathy suddenly straightened. Because David was wearing a suit. David was carrying a briefcase. David looked like money. I need the attending physician, now. Of course, sir, let me page him. No hesitation. No, you're next on the list. Just immediate compliance. Dr. Harmon appeared. Different posture. Different tone. Sir, how can I help you? My son is in your waiting room. He's been here for 2 hours. His fever is 105. No one has examined him. I wasn't aware of the situation. You were aware. My wife told you 3 times. Harmon's face flickered. He looked past David. Saw me. Made the connection. And I watched him recalculate. Sir, there must have been some miscommunication. There was no miscommunication. My wife told you our son was deteriorating. You told her to wait. You made assumptions about her, about us. And now my son is worse. Harmon was scrambling now. Let me examine him immediately. I'll personally oversee. No. David's voice was ice. You won't touch my son. You've already proven you can't be trusted with his care. I want another physician. Now. Harmon's face reddened. Sir, I'm the attending on duty. There isn't. Then call someone else. Page another doctor. Wake someone up. I don't care what it takes. He turned back to me. Vanessa, make the call. I pulled out my phone. Called the direct line I rarely used. The one that connected me to the chief of staff of University Medical Center. Dr. Whitfield, it's Vanessa Monroe. I apologize for the hour, but I have an emergency. My son is in the ER at Westside General. He's been denied care for 2 hours. I need a pediatric team here immediately. I hung up. Harmon was staring at me. Monroe, Vanessa Monroe. Dr. Vanessa Monroe, Chief of Pediatric Cardiology at University Medical, your employer's flagship hospital. The color drained from his face. I didn't realize. You didn't realize what? That the woman in old clothes might be someone worth listening to. That a mother who didn't arrive by ambulance might actually know what she was talking about. That a black woman in a sweatshirt might have 22 years of medical training. He couldn't speak. You looked at me and made assumptions. You decided, based on how I looked, that I didn't matter, that my son didn't matter, that we could wait while he got sicker. Because in your mind, we were nobody. 20 minutes later, a pediatric team arrived from University Medical. They examined Marcus immediately, ran tests, and found what I had suspected: a severe kidney infection that had begun spreading to his bloodstream. Sepsis. Early stage, but advancing. Another hour without treatment, and we would have been looking at organ damage. Or worse. They admitted Marcus immediately. IV antibiotics. Fluids. Round-the-clock monitoring. And I stayed by his bed, holding his hand, while my husband handled what came next. Dr. Harmon was suspended pending investigation. Not because I demanded it. Because the chief of staff reviewed the security footage. Watched him dismiss me 3 times. Watched him laugh. Watched him walk away from a critically ill child because he assumed the mother was poor. The investigation found patterns. Harmon had a history. Complaints from other patients, mostly women, mostly minorities, mostly people who arrived without insurance cards already in hand. Complaints that had been filed and ignored. Patterns that had been documented but never addressed. He wasn't just cruel to me. He was cruel to anyone he deemed unimportant. And the system had let him. 3 weeks later, Marcus was fully recovered. Running around our backyard like nothing had happened. Laughing. Playing. Alive. But I couldn't let it go. Not the incident itself. The question underneath it. What if I hadn't been a doctor? What if David hadn't arrived in a suit? What if we really had been the poor, unimportant family Harmon assumed we were? What would have happened to my son? I already knew the answer. Because I'd seen it. Throughout my career, I'd seen it. Children who came to me too late. Conditions that should have been caught earlier. Parents who told me they'd been dismissed, ignored, sent home with Tylenol and told not to worry. I used to wonder how that happened. How obvious symptoms got missed. How parents' concerns got ignored. Now I knew. It happened like this. One assumption at a time. One calculation at a time. One glance at someone's clothes, someone's skin, someone's speech, and a decision made before a single word was spoken. I started a program. Not immediately. It took 6 months to develop. But I couldn't move on without doing something. It's called the Patient Dignity Initiative. Training for medical staff, doctors, nurses, intake specialists, everyone, on unconscious bias in emergency care. On the assumptions we make. On the lives those assumptions cost. We use real cases. Including mine. Including the footage of Dr. Harmon walking away from my son. Medical students watch it. Residents watch it. Attending physicians watch it. And then we talk about what happened. About the calculations Harmon made. About the pattern of complaints no one addressed. About the child who almost died because his mother didn't look important enough. Some people push back. They say it's too political. That we're making doctors feel bad. That implicit bias training doesn't work. But I keep going. Because I remember the waiting room. I remember Marcus's breathing getting worse. I remember the laugh. And I know that somewhere, right now, there's another mother in a waiting room. Another child who needs help. Another doctor making calculations based on appearance instead of symptoms. And not every mother can make the call I made. Not every father arrives in a suit. Not every family has the power to demand better care. What happens to them? That's the question that keeps me up at night. Not revenge. Not satisfaction that Harmon lost his job. The weight of everyone who doesn't have what I have. Who can't fight the way I can. Who gets dismissed and has no recourse. Because the truth is, my son survived because of privilege. Not the privilege Harmon assumed I didn't have. The privilege I actually had. Connections, credentials, a phone number that got answered at 3 a.m. I didn't earn better care for Marcus by proving I deserved it. I earned it by proving I had power. And that's not a system. That's a failure. I spoke at a conference last year. Medical ethics, patient care, the usual topics. But I went off script. I told the story. All of it. The sweatshirt. The assumption. The laugh. The phone call that saved my son's life. And then I asked the room a question. How many of you have ever looked at a patient and made assumptions before examining them? Silence. How many of you have ever prioritized a patient who looked wealthy, looked connected, looked like someone who might cause problems if ignored? More silence. How many of you have sent someone home who turned out to have something serious and wondered later if you might have looked more closely if they'd arrived differently? No one raised their hand. But I saw faces change. I saw recognition. I saw discomfort. That discomfort you're feeling right now, that's the beginning of change. That's the moment where you decide whether you're going to keep being who you've been or become who your patients need you to be. I don't know if it worked. I don't know if anyone in that room changed their practice. But I had to try. Because Marcus is alive. And I owe something to every child who isn't. Dr. Harmon sent me a letter. 6 months after he was fired. I almost didn't open it. It was an apology. Sort of. He said he hadn't realized who I was. He said if he'd known, he would have treated us differently. He said he wasn't racist. He was just overwhelmed, overworked, making quick decisions under pressure. I read it 3 times. And then I wrote back. Dr. Harmon, your letter confirms exactly what I already knew. You weren't cruel because you hated me. You were cruel because you didn't see me. You didn't see my son as a child who was suffering. You saw a case that didn't seem urgent because the mother didn't seem important. The problem isn't that you didn't know who I was. The problem is that it mattered. Every patient deserves the care you would have given me if you'd recognized my name. That's not a high bar. That's the bare minimum. I'm not angry anymore, but I'm not forgiving either. Because forgiveness requires change, and your letter doesn't show change. It shows regret at getting caught. When you can write me a letter that says, I would have treated you the same way no matter who you were, then we can talk about forgiveness. Until then, I hope the memory of that night teaches you something. I hope it haunts you, not out of cruelty, but because haunting is sometimes the only thing that leads to change. Dr. Vanessa Monroe. I never heard from him again. Marcus is 7 now. He doesn't remember that night. Doesn't remember how sick he was. Doesn't remember the waiting room, or the fever, or the fear. But I remember. Every time I walk into an ER. Every time I see a parent with a sick child. Every time I watch a doctor make that quick assessment that determines who matters. I remember what it felt like to be invisible. To be dismissed. To hold my son and know he was dying while someone with the power to help walked away. And I remember what it took to change that. The suit. The phone call. The revelation of who I was. The things that shouldn't have mattered. But did. That's what I carry. Not the victory. The truth. The truth that my son's life depended on my status. The truth that a different mother might have lost her child. The truth that somewhere right now, it's happening again. And the question I can't stop asking. What kind of world requires you to prove you're powerful before your child gets to live? I don't have an answer. But I keep asking. Because the asking is how things change. Maybe you've been in that waiting room. Maybe you've been dismissed. Maybe you've been the one dismissing. Whatever your role, I want you to sit with this. The person in front of you, the one who looks poor, looks uneducated, looks like they can wait, they might be a chief of cardiology. Or they might not. And it shouldn't matter. Their child should matter regardless. Their pain should matter regardless. Their humanity should matter regardless. If it only matters when they prove they're powerful, then it doesn't matter at all. It's just strategy. And strategy isn't care. So here's my question for you. Not about the big moments. About the small ones. How do you treat people when you think they're nobody? When there's no consequence for cruelty? When no one's watching? That's who you are. Not the performance when it matters. The reality when it doesn't. I learned that in a waiting room at 2 a.m. Holding my son. Watching a doctor walk away. And I decided who I was going to be. Not someone who needed power to receive compassion. Someone who gave compassion, regardless of power. That's the lesson. Not revenge. Not vindication. Just a choice about who you want to be in a world that rewards cruelty when no one's watching. I made my choice. What's yours? This is Reality Voice. If this story hit close, if you've been the one waiting or the one walking away, you're supposed to be here. Leave a comment. Tell me about the moment someone decided your worth before they knew your name. And if you're still here, still sitting with this, subscribe. Because these stories aren't about revenge. They're about recognition. And sometimes recognition is the first step toward everything changing. What would happen if we treated everyone like they might be someone important?